There's a lot of talk about the real estate market and something called a shadow inventory. What is it? It's the real estate show. Welcome to the Real Estate Show. My name is Rick Naples. I am the owner-broker of Zone Realty LLC. You zone your home. Shadow inventory. What's that all about? I mean, what is it? Is it something we should look forward to? Or is it something we should fear? It's a terminology that is used in the real estate world to talk about those properties that have not yet but probably will be coming on the market for sale. Now, it's a number of different types of houses. It could be bank foreclosures that the lender's been holding on to, just waiting for the market to be right. It could be sellers that have been hesitant to put their house on the market, but either because of a motivational life change or something that's urging them to do it, they decide to put their house on the market now. Or it could be houses that are what we call zombie houses, and I'll talk about that later in the show. But is all this inventory waiting to come on the market? And if it does, what is it going to do to the present prices on homes that are for sale? Well, let's take a step back. We know because of the coronavirus, inventories were very low. And we know that the effect on the real estate market was there was a lot of houses that when they came on the market, they sold right away. In fact, there were bidding wars on those houses. We knew that for the few inventory that there were too many buyers, and buyers would start overbidding on price. It was a bonanza. And it was very hard for a first-time buyer to find a home that they could buy. Well, all that is starting to slow down. There are several articles that are out there that are saying that we're heading towards a normalization of the market. Not right away, but it is starting to turn. We're in the fall season and we're starting to see more houses come on the market. And whether these are shadow inventory type houses or whether these are just regular houses that sellers are putting on the market, we are starting to see more houses come up for sale. This means the buyer has more choices. There's less competition on each house. It's kind of a double-edged sword. It's a good thing for the buyers, but maybe a bad thing for the sellers. We've been in a seller's market for so long that a lot of buyers just gave up. They just decided that right now is not the time to buy a house because if we try, our offer is not going to be accepted, especially if we don't have big amounts of money to put down on a house where we can overbid. So people started to get away from the market. Now, traditionally in real estate, we see inventories increase in the spring, and we see inventory, meaning houses for sale, in the fall. Now, those two seasons play an interesting role because usually in the springtime, people are putting their houses up for sale because they'd like to sell them and be able to move while the weather is still warm. Those folks who put their house on in the fall usually are putting it on the market because there's been a life-changing event and they pretty much don't have any choice. They're going to move during the cold weather, or maybe they're leaving the state and going someplace warmer. But in either case, those two times of the year, we usually see housing inventory or houses that are for sale increase. Because of COVID, we didn't have a spring selling season. We haven't had one for a long time. People hesitated, and those houses, as I said, that came on the market were houses that sellers really needed to sell to move on to whatever their situation might be. And because of those few houses on the market, those people who needed to buy started to compete with each other. And the seller always won out because the buyers would get a little crazy and start offering dollars over listing price. The economic situation, though, is changing. As we're getting better in our economy, as people are starting to go back to work, as kids are going back to school, and we're starting to see COVID numbers come down, things are starting to get to that normal type of market. So people have more confidence, and we're going to see more houses come on the market. Let's take a quick look at this little presentation that talks about shadow inventory, and I'll be back with some more comments on how this is going to affect the real estate market. Do you remember your economics course back in high school or maybe college that tells you that supply and demand are related to each other? Well, that's the way it works in the real estate market. The more houses that are listed and that are put on for sale, and the more choices that buyers have to buy a house, those will start to make the market normalize. It becomes a buyer's market because buyers have choice. When there are few houses on the market, well, that means what we've experienced, a small amount of inventory. And as a result, you have a number of buyers because of interest rates and opportunity that want to buy houses, but not a lot of houses to buy. So a competition is gathered. Supply, demand. Demand, supply. They go hand in hand. Let's talk about a specific aspect of the shadow inventory. As I said, shadow inventory is either houses that the banks have already foreclosed on and have been sitting on waiting for the market to be more agreeable to them. In other words, they can get the biggest price they can for the house. Or there's sellers that are looking to put their house on the market but are hesitant, and they might decide to pull the trigger and put it on the house or put it on the market. And then there are those houses that we call zombie houses. I want to talk specifically about foreclosures for a moment. Now we know because of COVID, because of loss of jobs, of no fault of the individual, because of the situation that we were in, we saw a lot of people fall behind on their payments when it comes to paying their mortgage. Normally, if someone falls 2 or 3 months behind on their mortgage and can't renegotiate the deal, the bank will start the foreclosure procedure and foreclose on the home. Banks, quite honestly, don't want to foreclose on homes because they're not in the business to sell houses. They're in the business to loan money. But it happens. But what we saw happen is people were defaulting on their mortgages, and we kept getting stays or situations where the government stepped in and did not allow foreclosures to take place. They kept extending. In other words, the government was saying, because of COVID, we will extend the time that you can stay in your home and not allow the bank to come in and foreclose. And when we would get towards the deadline of that, they'd extend it even further. And we get towards that deadline and they'd extend it even further. Well, especially with rentals, there was an outcry that this needs to stop. And you can't keep extending these people living in their homes, in some cases, a year and a half without making a mortgage payment. And it's costing a lot of money. So as a result, those stays, as I call them, have gone away. Now the banks have the opportunity to step in and foreclose on the property. But here's an interesting thing. Some of those sellers who haven't been able to make their mortgage payments, who will probably be facing foreclosure, they've been in their houses for a while, and some of them have equity in those houses. So they're going to decide to put their house on the market and sell it and get that equity out, then let the bank foreclose on them. There was no reason to put it on the market and sell it before because they were living there for free. So why go through all that hassle? But when it comes to long term and looking at their finances, it might make sense to put their house on the market and sell it and get their money out of it rather than letting the bank take it. But there's also going to be that situation of where you're going to have those homes that people have been living in that haven't been making their mortgage payments that the banks will start the foreclosure process on. And eventually they will foreclose on the home. And the lender who forecloses is going to decide to release that home to the market. Now, does this mean that all of a sudden we're going to have a whole bunch of houses coming on the market all at the same time? Well, it could, but at the same time, probably not. You see, banks are smart. If they foreclose on a property, they're not just going to put it on the market and take any old dollars they can get for it. They're going to put them out on the market a little bit at a time, testing the market to get the highest return they can, because they've had a loan on that house. They want to make sure that loan gets paid off through the process of selling the house. Some of the sellers out there that put their homes on the market, well, because more houses will come on the market, they're not going to be willing to hold out so long or be looking for offers over their asking price. In fact, they may come on the market, and we're going to see what's happening now. Houses are staying on the market longer than they did, and prices on some houses are starting to come down. So we're seeing price drops again. We're seeing buyers making offers on houses that are at asking price or a little bit lower. And we're starting to see the negotiation for closing costs or repairs or things of those sorts start to come up again. Is this going to be common practice? Maybe not right away, but it is the way we're going. Will there be a shift from a seller's market to a buyer's market? We got to wait and see. Let's take a look at this, and I'll be back with a few more comments on shadow inventory. So what is the overall effect? more houses are coming on the market or will come on the market between the fall and the spring. What does that actually do to the real estate market? Well, as I've said, as more inventory comes on, more houses for sale, we're going to see a shift from a seller's favorable market to a buyer's favorable market. But there's a lot of factors that are involved in it. It's not just the number of houses coming on the market. It also has to do with buyers' capability to obtain mortgages, interest rates, down payment amounts, and so on and so forth. Usually all this comes together in the fall. Everyone wants to have a good year. The banks want to have a good year. The real estate market wants to have a good year. Everyone wants to have a good year. So we'll see these increases happening, homes for sale, as we go through the fall, with closings going into next year. So what is the bottom line here? What are the forecasters saying is going to happen right now? This is 2021. What's going to happen right now? Well, it seems to be an agreement that most of the folks that look at the numbers and look at market changes and look at what's happening in the market, the consensus is that by the end of 2021, which is coming up real fast, we will start to see that shift to a buyer's market. Does this create an urgency for you, a seller that's looking to put your home on the market and make your listing price? That's something you need to talk to your realtor about. Sometimes timing is everything, but again, I'm going to go back to an old philosophy of mine. When is the time to buy a house or to sell a house? It's when the timing is right for you, for your situation. There's a lot to consider. Let's take this look at this little presentation I put together. It defines a phenomenon called zombie house. I'm talking on this real estate show about shadow inventory, what it is, and how it may affect the markets as they are today. Are we on the cusp of a lot of houses coming on the market, thus changing from a seller's market to a buyer's market? It seems that's the way we're going, but we're not just there yet. Now, I've been doing the real estate show for a number of years, as you know, and I was going back through my archives, looking at shows that I've done in the past. And I actually talked about this topic, shadow inventory, and what it was, all the way back in October of 2014. And at that time, I was talking about the unseen houses that will be coming on the market for sale and how they'll affect the market. That was back in a normal type market. We're now coming out of COVID, so the market's going to shift, and it's going to shift big time and probably relatively quickly when it does happen. But we also have the phenomenon of what I call zombie houses. It's a term that I picked up in an article that I read. No, it's not because I'm filming this show in October and Halloween is a couple of weeks away. No, they're not scary houses and they're not filled with the undead. The zombie house is just like what the presentation said. These are houses that were foreclosed on just before the COVID pandemic hit. The banks were getting ready to put these houses on the market, and then it was a stop. The houses could not be put on the market. In other words, the foreclosure process had either started to foreclose on the owner, or it was already foreclosed on and it was getting ready to be put up for sale on the market. And everything stopped because of COVID. So you have a combination of these houses, and you've seen them. You've been out there driving around. You go down most neighborhoods, you'll find that one house that looks like nobody lives in it. The grass is 2 foot tall. In the wintertime, you drive by the house, the driveway's not plowed or shoveled, the walks aren't cleared. Sometimes the first floor of the house is boarded up and you wonder, what's going on there? What's happening there with that house? Well, that's a zombie house. That's a house that was ready to have something happen with, and for one reason or another, did not happen. We'll see those start to come on the market too. So, shadow inventory, it is out there. It is coming. Is it the right time to buy? Or is it the time to sell? Again, that's up for you to make a decision. My name is Rick Naples. This has been The Real Estate Show. I thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.